Welcome to Creators Anonymous. This is the podcast that reaches out to creative people to get to know them better, find out what they do for a living, and the creative process. And today I am with Miss Sunday White, the punk knitter, and she has an amazing online store with handcrafted items and everything. So everybody, Sunday.
Hello.
Sunday, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy
All right.
Saturday on Sunday.
that is a good one. So Sunday, can you give the fans and everybody that listens to this podcast a little intro of who you are and how you got into knitting?
I am a punk by heart, uh, married woman in the Great Pacific Northwest, and many, many moons ago, albeit while I come from a crafty family, I was working in theater. And one of the things that you have to do when you work backstage in theater is be quiet. And there are moments of frantic activity, and then there are large stretches of sit still and be quiet. And so while I was in theater, one of the ladies that worked in the lobby taught me how to knit. And I would always carry yarn and needles in my pockets because I always wear cargo pockets. I still do. And I'd get done with whatever needed to happen. I'd squat down by a red light and I'd hang out there and I'd knit in between calls so that I could keep myself distracted, but listening actively. It's very much like a fidget spinner where you have something going on so you can leave your mind elsewhere. Um, and that was 18 years ago now. So it's been a while. My grandmother was a lace maker and a knitter. My mother is a spinner. I also do tapestry weaving and silk dyeing, some hammering on metal because sometimes you got to get your aggressions out. My wife is a woodworker. There's a lot of craft around my house. Um, I'm looking at maybe getting into some painting just because I'm not good at 3D or 2D dimensional type representations. I have fun with photography, but fiber is definitely where my heart lies.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. I was actually just looking at your Etsy store, and you have a lot of I don't know. Oh, sorry, not Etsy store. You're just your regular
Okay, yeah.
stuff.
That caught me off guard
Yeah.
because I thought I shut down my Etsy.
No, I'm sorry. I was on your link tree, and Etsy was the first thing that popped in my mind. No, I was looking at your online store, and you have some amazing marble patterned silk scarves, and that was the fabric dyeing you were talking about.
Correct. I use a heat react or sun reactive dyeing process where the pigment actually rises up to the sun. So I can only do it when it's like 90 degrees out in full sun. It's an all day
Oh, so
process. So yeah, I build up my starks. My words are hard. I build up my silk scarf stock in the summers, and that gives me some materials that people can wear and sport around either in the office or for fun anywhere. They work great as little beach, like they're great in the breeze because they're silk, so they flow nicely. Um, but I build up that stock so that people have something that they can purchase that isn't a two, three, $400 item. I know my large knits tend to get expensive, and that can cause a little bit of sticker shock. Also, it's nice to have silks for things like the spring and summer shows where people aren't wanting to touch wool. They just don't feel like it when it's 80, 90 degrees outside. A
no, a little too heavy.
little too
Um,
heavy.
I did notice that your silk scarves, not only are they light and breezy and they look amazing, but their prices are great. And guys out there, if you're a woman like silk, these are perfect for them. They look like they make great presents.
They really do.
So
I actually, I'm feel very honored. I met a lady on the bus the other day coming home from work, and I gave her my business card. And a couple days later, she's like, I want to get this thing from you, but I don't want to have to deal with shipping. And it's for my coworker whose birthday is later this week. Can we just meet on the bus again? I'm like, I got you.
see that's the basis of small business in the Northwest. Like most connections are made on public transport, and that's
Public
That's an
transport
awesome
or
thing.
like brewery fests,
Or freaking coffee shops. How many multi-billion-dollar deals were made in the lobby of like Starbucks?
right? I know I've had some
Uh,
interesting calls from there.
there are probably some people thinking, what is the difference between crocheting and knitting?
So you'll often see people posting with, "Oh, this is so cute. Can you make this for me?" And I'll immediately come like, hey, "That's adorable, but it's crochet. It's not my thing." With crochet, you have one live stitch on a hook. And you're building off of that stitch constantly, so it moves across one stitch at a time. With knitting, you have live stitches that run the entire length of your project. So considering the direction of the project and how it's built out, if you also it takes two needles because you're moving live stitch to live stitch from one needle to the next. Whereas crochet, you're literally working with one stitch live at any given time. You can build up stitches, but always comes back to a single to move to the next section. I've done crochet. I can do crochet. It's not my strong suit, but there are a lot of patterns that call for some crochet skills in the setup and the follow through, like different types of stitches, different types of joins, different ways to start your project so that you can, well, example, I did a wedding shawl slash veil for my friend's wedding. She asked me in October, and a year later in October was her wedding. I actually got the materials and was able to start on it in January, and I finished it 2 weeks before her wedding. So it was a very
Wow.
long drawn out process, and it was about 20 inches wide. It was about 7 feet long, and I did what was called a provisional cast on, which requires a crochet chain stitch, just your basic crochet chain stitch, which is how you start something. And that is so that when I got to the very end, I could undo that chain stitch, put it back on the needle, and do something called a Kitchener, so that it was invisible join. So it became an infinity shawl. It was a never ending Mongolian cashmere gossamer weight lace veil with beads.
Holy cow, that was a mouthful. So honestly, when people are looking at your prices, going, "Oh my God, this shaw's $200," they really have to think, "Oh well, she probably just spent a year making it," or there's a lot of time invested in for handcrafted items. Expect to pay a little bit more than something you'd find at Ross.
The time and the materials.
Yeah.
I try very, very hard to source materials that are either upcycled or materials that are sourced in a kind method, or items that have been handled and made in the U.S. if possible. There's only so many mills in the world, so I might get yarn that's locally dyed, and I'm supporting small business dyers, but that fiber that they got might have actually come from Australia and was milled in Europe, because that's where the mills are. There's a very finite number of functioning mills. So when you're looking at fiber bases, a lot of times, and I've learned this from some of my dyer friends, that different dyers will all have the same base. It's how they handle the fiber that makes them feel different, makes them look different, makes the color changes. And just like any other maker, we all have our personal palettes that make us happy. So there are certain dyers that I support more, partly because they're local, partly because they're friends, partly because they have the vibrancy of color that I want to use. So
Oh,
there's some investment there. The Mongolian cashmere I used for that particular veil I got from a teacher of mine who lives in Colorado, who studies Orenburg lace, which is a region in that was Soviet Russia a long time ago. So it's kind of crazy because she knows so much about gossamer shawls and wedding ring shawls and things that are very much regional to the USSR. But she has her own collection of fibers that she sells, and she was able to source these for me. And each ball of that was, I want to say it was like $75 a ball.
whoa.
So
So
that's before it's made into anything. So some of
yeah.
these items also, when you look at the time investment, you also have to look at what was the raw fiber cost, because I'm not getting yarn at Joann's or Michael's. It does have its place. I love Joann's and Michael's, Hobby Lobby. Well, not so much Hobby Lobby. I have issues with them politically. There's a couple other craft warehouses out there that supply goods, and they're great for starters. They're great for getting acrylics. Knit Picks is great for getting some really nice soft fiber acrylics that aren't actually animal fiber. You can get coconut, you can get different types of man-made silks. There's all kinds of stuff that you can make if you are allergic to wool and can't have it. But there is definitely a cost involved there, and it's more than what you would see if you go and look at the bins in your local craft warehouse.
So this is just a weird observation I had thinking about it. I noticed that there's a lot of alpaca and llama farms around the Northwest. Do you ever reach out to source to those people?
I don't directly, just because I have a collection. I know our listeners can't see my background, but I made sure that just in case you took screenshots or had video, that it was a decent presentation, and I have a healthy collection. Most of the fiber on the wall behind me is wool. Most of it leans toward merino or Polworth. I have some silk blends in there, and I have a fair amount of llama and alpaca. My mother, being a spinner, deals with the farms more directly because she is actually getting that raw fiber and creating it. So I do have a bunch, and a lot of it is stuff that she's spun, which also, of course, increases the value of the ticket price because it's irreplaceable. It's not machine milled. It's one of a kind before I ever touch it. So that's fun. I do have my wife and I went to Bend for a birthday, and when we came back, we stopped by a farm in Terrebonne that has about 200 alpacas, and we got there about 20 minutes after a baby was born. So that was really
Oh,
cool. And I got two skeins, a nice dark black one and one that's a pale like fog gray. And neither of these are dyed. That's just the color of the animal fiber.
well, that's awesome, and knowing that it's ethically sourced. I know, like sheep, alpacas need to be sheared, or else they'll grow
Yes.
too much and overheat and everything. And I know there's people out there like you shouldn't use this stuff, but honestly, like we're providing a service for those animals. They need to be sheared, or else they'll start having health issues and all this other stuff.
Yep.
And like I'm really really glad to know that you ethically source this type of stuff. And
I really try to. I
yeah.
really try to. I know in the beginning it was less of a focus, but as I've gotten older and I've gotten more of an activist position in my life and become more educated on the cost of shipping and the damage it does to the environment, what it does to animals, a lot of people get stressed or point toward the stress that shearing causes animals. And yes, it's stressful. I'm not saying it's fun for the animal, but at the same time, it is healthy for the animal. It's not fun for me to go to the doctor and get my yearly checkup. I still have to do it. You know, we still
Yeah.
have to get our hair cut.
Uh,
Think of that first time your toddler gets their hair cut. That's not fun.
no,
They don't
haircuts are
like it.
definitely. I have
It's
I have
good for
three
them.
kids. I have three kids, and we've all done the first haircut. Like, they're that none of them liked it, and even my 13-year-old, she still doesn't like getting her hair cut. And honestly, I'm almost 35, and I hate getting my hair cut. I'd rather just shave my head at home. But yeah,
As I rub the sides of my shaven head.
yeah. Uh, but uh honestly, like me and my wife take the kids out to this petting zoo out in a few, like in the rural parts of Washington. And the alpacas there, we were there long enough to see the guy like rolling in his like shearing thing, and he had all the bags, and they were like running up to him and like lifting their feet for him and everything. I was like, okay, they want to be cut. Like, if you have a good handler, then the animals know that this is going to be a pleasant experience. And if
Yep,
you have a jerk that treats them like crap, then they're going to get all stressed out.
exactly.
So it's honestly, if you can get truly ethical sourced materials, not only are you doing something good for local businesses, you're doing a service for all these farmers that rely on that income.
You are, and a lot of these farmers, at least I know in the Pacific Northwest region, there seems to be a growing interest in doing what's the right word for it? It's not homeopathic. It's they're looking at their farms and how the different creatures interact with the different types of chemicals that go into the soil. So the idea that chickens remove bugs and their poop is very good for the soil. And then the next year you cycle over different animals. And then the next year you cycle in certain crops. And that cycling of all of these creatures around the farm actually makes the farm more healthy and removes the pesticides and allows all these creatures a safer place to roam. And they get their own kind of like herd mentality and hive mind, like this is my family, this is my space, and it's healthy for everybody, and it removes the chemical processes,
Yeah,
which is important.
I actually have a little fact on that. My grandmother owns a really large produce farm in Idaho, about almost just short of 100 acres. And every year she has a huge bonfire, and then takes the ashes and mixes it in with the topsoil of her entire crop field, and that actually puts a whole bunch of new nutrients back into the soil. And she gets amazing crop yields every single year. And it was a trick that uh, my just the farmers in my family have passed down over generations. This is just part of
Perfect.
the tradition. Like, every year you do this. Every other year, instead of planting crops, you plant part of your crop needs to go for thistle and all these other vibrant herbs and they don't harvest them. They just till them back into the dirt.
Yep.
So, like, it's my grandmother has a rotation through her field that every part of her every year there's like a massive crop of one thing, but part of her field is also a crop of a rejuvenating plant that helps put nutrients back into the soil.
Yep. And then
So,
there are the people that are mostly animal farmers. They do the same thing with the different animals.
yes.
Having that pet interaction, having that natural wildlife occur, I mean, I'm surprised every farm out there doesn't have its own beehive,
Yep.
because you need that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's
That that's
definitely in my interest, even though I'm definitely still living in suburbia.
yeah. I
That's where my
mean,
interest goes.
yeah, I live in suburbia as well, and I mean, I work in manufacturing, and I actually, my job, I deal in a lot of shipping and everything, and I see these shipping costs. And the one thing that we've helped reduce is we don't send out one pallet at a time anymore. It's either full truckloads or nothing. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
I
like,
actually also have a logistical background. I was logistics director for a couple of companies now, and I'm with you on that. The education of fast fashion and helping people understand that you know $3, $5, $7 scarf you got at Target is not the same as what I'm hand making. And
yep.
yes, you might be able to find a towel for $15 down the street at Ross, but have you looked at the cost of the transit and the packaging and the handling, and who's getting paid for that? Where's that fiber coming from? How are the people that produce that being treated? And
Yeah.
because it's not coming from here.
Well, and then on top of that, that $15 scarf that you just bought at Target might last you 2 to 3 years, where a handmade scarf or a handmade shawl or something like that, something you make, is going to last for years. Perfect example.
I would
I
say
have
a
a leather.
lifetime if it doesn't get eaten by moths.
Yeah, like your handmade stuff is built to last, whereas a $5 thing from Target is gonna maybe last you a year, two tops. And
Yeah. Well, one of the other fun things with that too, and you'll see a lot of new makers or makers that like to do more upcycling. I know that when money was in a different situation in my life, I would go to Goodwill. I would go to Value Village, any sort of resale shop, and look for Goodwill sweaters or good cashmere sweaters or good anything that was a natural fiber. And I would take them home and I would cut them apart and I would pull them apart and I would use that yarn and I'd make
hey,
something different.
that's a skill worth having, because a lot of that stuff, like, I don't know, I don't deal in fabrics or anything. I just don't imagine it being easy to take apart. So that's
If
that's
it's
definitely
knit,
a skill.
if it's knit, it's not so bad as long as you've got those, those ends under control. It matters the quality of sweater. You got to look at the stitching and seaming on how it's constructed. You might get 8, 10 little balls instead of one big. big ball, but you can definitely get the fiber off of that. I also save all of my trimmings and excess and small bits after I get done with something. There's always leftovers. Playing yarn chicken is scary. You don't want to run out, 8 inches before the end of a row. So you always, if this shawl is going to take 400 yards, you plan for 420, just in case, just to make sure. So all of that leftover yardage that isn't big enough to do a full product, I put into bins, and I have a bit of a hoarding issue here. But that fiber, those bits and small amounts are perfect for tapestry weaving because
I
it's
was just gonna
small,
say.
it's one off. You can mix and match colors, and you're always changing things up. Anytime you're doing weaving, you're offloading your fiber onto a shuttle, so you can only carry so much at a time. So when you look at a woven product, that's often, especially if it's hand woven, if it's something a little thicker, you're not going to see something and actually have one fiber that runs end to end. That's going to be 18, 20 different connections in there that are hidden in the weave.
That's awesome. So I'm glad that you, not only are you ethically sourcing, but you're salvaging and you're using the complete product. You're not having any waste. So
Trying.
that's a great thing. I don't see it like, I mean, there might be like little clips from like when you tie a knot and you want to get rid of the excess string, but outside of that, I don't see huge amounts of waste going on.
No.
So
The my only real argument against that are the bits that go out on Twitter or Facebook about, hey, put all your excess bits in the bin outside for the bird's nest. Don't do that. Please don't do that. It's not good for cats. It's not good for birds. It's not good for the environment. Do not do that.
no,
100%.
no, that's yeah. And people are like, oh no, they don't use them for nest building. Like they use them for like mating rituals and stuff like that. And yeah, that's no, it's still not good.
It's not a
So
natural fiber. It's not from their environment, even if it is an animal. It's been plied, it's been spun, it's been forced and adjusted. It's a stronger than it was originally item because of that plying and twisting. And there's tangle issues. It gets caught in their beaks. It gets caught in their feathers. Gets caught up in their
talents,
talons. Thank you.
talents.
Words are hard. So yeah, no, it's bad. And a lot of times the fibers that people are using in these little suggested like nest trimming things are acrylic, so they're not going to
Ugh,
break down,
no.
which is scary.
Well,
I kind of like love, but also get a little scared when I see people that are doing yarn bombing on plants. I love yarn bombing. If you're not familiar with the term yarn bombing,
yeah, I'm not. So you might
okay,
want to.
Google yarn bombing. You'll get some pretty epic stuff. I personally like the big pink tank, but yarn bombing is when people will actually do crochet or knit or wovens of some form and cover objects out in the public. It's basically graffiti with fiber,
I just Googled it, and there's like a line of trees. Somebody yarn bombed a car. Somebody completely yarned somebody's bike.
right? It's
I
pretty cool, and
Yeah, I'm just
it's subversive and it's fun and it's colorful and it's like positive graffiti because you can't really do negative graffiti with it. At least I don't think you can. You
yeah.
could.
Somebody
Let's not go there though.
somebody yarn bombed an entire like play set in a park, and like kids are running because they made tunnels and everything through it. Like it looks pretty awesome. Like that looks,
It's
yeah, that
pretty
looks
awesome.
kind of
My only problem with it is when they do, like, you see a lot of pictures of the trees and people are like, oh, I want to do that to my tree in my yard. Um, cool in the summer for a short period of time, but you are actually damaging the defensive uh, bark on the tree because it allows bugs to stay on it. It allows moisture to stay attached to it. So if you're gonna do it and then take it back down with
uh,
another plant.
I just seen one of the pictures where somebody had scissors and they're peeling the yarn away from a tree, and the you could see the color pattern still on the bark from the yarn. So is that just from bad dyes or like not good dyeing, or I don't know how to place it.
Um, if color is coming off your yarn, it's because it hasn't set properly, or it has set and that's excess dye, not dye. Losing the words again. It's hard.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at
Pigment,
that.
excess pigment. Uh,
Pigment. Okay.
so often when you do your own hand dyeing, what you will do is you will dye the items it will take or grab, and then it has to heat set, and then you rinse it, and usually use some sort of setting agent. Often it's citric acid or vinegar. Sometimes yarn will smell like vinegar. That's because vinegar is a good setting agent. And then once it's spun out and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed and rinsed until it goes clear, then you shouldn't be having any color come off the yarn. But there are times where I'm knitting with something, and the couple of fingers where I pull the yarn through as I'm actively knitting will have a little color stripe on it from the yarn. It just happens. It washes out. I wouldn't be so worried about the color on the trees unless it's acrylic and that's like stuck to it now, like the bark has grown into it. But the damage that can be done to the tree and its defensive unit and the plant life or the bug life that's in the tree that might be positive, as long as it only can get so much into there. But now you've created this secondary shell, and the bugs are in there, and they can't get out. They can't get washed away. They're not being hunted by birds because they can't see them or get to them. Like, it just changes the way the tree can defend itself.
So I get it. Yarn bombing fun, not forever.
Just do it on all of the benches and the bike locks, and if you do it on a fire hydrant, only on the bottom. Don't cover the knobs. Fire hydrant, things like that. Mailbox is great. Yarn bomb your street signs. Yarn bomb anything that isn't going to be alive.
I just got a vision of somebody yarn bombing a stop sign, just putting stop in yarn.
Oh.
Doesn't look any different. It's just cloth. But I want to wrap this up a little bit because I know you got a very busy day ahead of you. So where can people find you on the internet if they want to reach out to you about knitting and everything that you are doing?
So I have a couple of sites. The easiest way to find me is to go to my KnitPunk link tree, but I don't have that actual HTTPS.
It'll be in the show notes.
You rock. My e-commerce site is knitpunk.net. Very much like it sounds, like it's spelled like it sounds. KNITPUNK.net. It would be .com, but whoever owns that site is holding a ransom for like $3,000, and I'm not that wealthy.
No.
I have an Instagram. I have a Facebook that are both KnitPunk related. I also have my own personals. Something to throw out there. I am outspoken. I am an activist. I am proud. I am local. And this is my business. So I expect people to understand they're purchasing from me. I'm not trying to portray the Uber customer service of I'm representing somebody else. So I have had a couple of people come back to me with like, "Oh my God, that's a cuss word." I'm like, well, I cuss. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry.
Do they not understand the punk culture? Because
right.
I've been to more than one punk show, and please believe cussing's just part of the culture.
Right. So yes, knitpunk.net, knitpunk on Facebook, and then it is what is it on Instagram? It's Sundays all days, because things were hard to find a knitpunk relative on Instagram that wasn't already taken. And it's SUNDAZEALLDAZE, because I'm kind of in the days. But if you search knitpunk, #knitpunk on Google, you'll find links to all kinds of things. You will probably find my personal stuff too, where I'm a little more outspoken. Just saying.
Well,
I don't mince words.
You'll find her because you will see a picture of a woman wearing sunglasses with giant Liberty spikes. So
that's me.
Yes. Yep. I seen that and I was like, okay, I'm loving this already. And then I started scrolling through your store and I was just like, this lady is awesome and super talented and everything. But there was one question I had for you.
Yeah.
I should have asked this earlier. Do you take custom orders? Like if somebody has like a print design or something, will you do those for them?
Regarding a print design in particular, I would need to have a discussion about it and look at what the design was. I am not interested in stepping over legal toes and jumping into somebody else's trademarked stuff. That
Oh,
said, I love commission work. I do a lot of commission work. A lot of what I've done isn't on my website because I sold it. It's gone. It's out there. Somebody else has it. I also try and sell local a lot. So there are things that I have available for sale in person that never made it to the site. But yes, no, commission work is fun because then I know I'm making something wanted and I know it's for a thing. Like, to me, a lot of the items that I make are tangible memories. It's an opportunity to have something for a wedding or a birth, or this was my grandmother's item and I want to be able to put it on the wall. Can you make something out, like these are going to be around for a long time and they're going to trigger an emotion and a memory, or they're going to cause you hope or relaxation. There are a couple of large shawls that I actually thought about pinning on driftwood and hanging on the wall like art because they're so big, but they're pretty and I want to see them. So yeah, no, commissions are great. The commissions on silks are more challenging, but I have a wide variety. I have way more silks than are on the website. If somebody's looking for a particular color, they can reach out to me. Also the fun of computers and color balance. I had the lady on the bus, the earlier story about the silk that I sold. She picked out a silk from the website that she really loved, and she's like, it's pink and peachy and I love it and she would love this. And I'm like, well, let's meet in person because that's actually brick.
So yeah, pictures sometimes don't capture the actual color of the product. I know a lot of cosplayers that not only would they probably like a lot of your work, but they also have a hard time translating the true colors of their work with a camera.
Yeah.
And you just got to see that stuff in person. So
And
yes,
even if you translate it, you can't control somebody else's monitor settings.
exactly. So yes, definitely guys, reach out to her, hit up her website. I'll have the link tree posted on the show notes. Sunday, you've been amazing. Thank you for taking time to talk with me. I really look forward to scrolling through your store and hopefully finding something for my wife.
Perfect. Well, also keep an eye on, Twitter, Facebook. Every now and then I'll be like, hey, this is what I'm working on. And people are like, has somebody claimed that yet? Like, nope, now you have.
Yeah, definitely. I will be following her on Twitter and retweeting a lot of your stuff. So watch our Twitter. You guys can find me at CreatorsAnon. You can also email me at creatorsanon@gmail.com, and I will send you all of Sunday's stuff. I will send you just everything she's got. So please definitely hit up Sunday. And
one last side note.
Yep.
Just for those who aren't aware, also, you will see a lot of soccer-related content.
Are you a soccer fan, or how the Europeans call it, foosball?
I am a Portland native. Excuse me, I shouldn't use that term because I feel like that's been co-opted. I am born and raised in Portland. I lived in Seattle for a very short time, but I'm a local Portlander, Oregon, Webfoot, all the way, and I capo for both the Timbers Army and the Rose City Riveters. So that Mohawk is up often at Providence Park, and there's a lot of content that comes through my feeds that is related to soccer because I feel very strongly about the equality of soccer pay and the equality of soccer play in Portland, and how much good work that we have done is the 107ist, which is the nonprofit that is kind of the front office, not front office, like they communicate and represent our supporter groups to the world in a nonprofit status. We do a lot of good work, and so I'm very proud of the Timbers Army. I'm very proud of the Rose City Riveters, and I'm very proud of our soccer teams and the work that we do in the community. So that comes up a lot. Throw that out there. If you don't like soccer, heads up. If I say football, I'm not talking about hand egg.
You're not talking about the NFL.
Cool.
Yeah. So on a quick side note, are you looking forward to the European season starting up soon?
I am. I'm both of them. I mean, we just got done watching a Bundesliga match, so there's always soccer.
Yeah, there is always soccer. Aren't there years like 2-year like 2 calendar years running? Like, isn't that a soccer season? Or am I
Uh,
thinking?
it matters what league and it matters what championship. I think
Oh,
you're thinking of like CONCACAF, which does your records play into the next season of whether or not you're eligible to play, and then the league playoff time, and then it's a long rotation, and then you have the World Cup where it's every 4 years, but it's men's. 2 years later is the women's. 2 years later is the men's. 2 years later is the women's. So it's still a 4-year cycle,
oh,
like Olympics. And then
nice.
there's the Olympics, and there's soccer in the Olympics too. Soccer will save the world.
Well, it's the most famous sport outside of America in the world, and even in America, it's really grabbed a foothold. And honestly, I'm surprised it didn't a lot sooner, simply because when I was a kid, when my dad was a kid, we were all forced to play soccer. So I get it. But I'm gonna wrap this up. Thank you very much, Sunday, for taking your Saturday out, and we will definitely stay in contact. And Chris says hi.
Perfect. Love it.
All right. Thank you
Take care.
much. Bye
Bye,
bye.
James.